Good morning. It's 11 o'clock, so that means it is time for our daily lectionary readings. Hey. Today, what do we have? We have Psalm 68, 24 to 35. We have 2 Samuel 6, 16 to 23, and then Luke 7, 31 to 35. So let's start with our Psalm 68. Your solemn processions are seen, O God, the processions of my God, my King, into the sanctuary. The singers in front, the musicians last, and between them the girls playing tambourines. Blessed God in the great congregation, the Lord, O you who are of Israel's fountain. And there is Benjamin, the least of them, in the lead, the princes of Judah in a body, the princes of Zebulun, the princes of Naphtali. Summon your might, O God. Show your strength, O God, as you have done for us before. Because of your temple at Jerusalem, kings bear gifts to you. Rebuke the wild animals that live among the reeds, the herd of bulls with the calves of the people. Trample underfoot those who lust after tribute. Scatter the peoples who delight in war. Let bronze be brought from Egypt. Let Ethiopia hasten to stretch out its hand to God. Sing to God, O kingdoms of the earth. Sing praises to the Lord. O rider in the heavens, the ancient heavens, listen. He sends out his voice, his mighty voice. Ascribe power to God, whose majesty is over Israel, and whose power is in the skies. Awesome is God in his sanctuary, the God of Israel. He gives power and strength to his people. Blessed be God. And there's one thing that popped out at me as I was just reading it just now. Way back, the Psalms were considered the Psalms of David. That David wrote the Psalms. And scholarly research has suggested that although David may have written some of the Psalms, many of them he did not. And that came to my mind because it says, verse 29, because of your temple at Jerusalem, kings bear gifts to you. There was no temple at Jerusalem during David's reign. David was not allowed to build the temple. That was Solomon who built the temple. So it was post-David before there was actually a temple. So the mere fact that this one references a temple would lead us to believe that it was written much later than David. It wouldn't have been written by David. And that's okay. I mean, all the Psalms are written by David it's not anything that the Bible's telling us. It is just simply tradition of men applied to Scripture. All right, let's continue on. 2 Samuel 6, 16 to 23. As the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord, and they set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and distributed food among all the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to each a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins. And then all the people went back to their homes. And David returned to bless his household, but Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "Oh, how the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of the servants' maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself." And David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me in place of your father and all his household to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of the Lord, that I have danced before the Lord. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in my own eyes. but by the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Now, this is, I do believe, the last mention of Michal. And we only have a few mentions of her in the Bible. We have David had been, I don't remember if it was actually formally betrothed, but there was talk of Saul's older daughter, but she married him off. He didn't want her married to David. So then later, he betrothed Michal to David, thinking David would be killed, collecting the dowry, the bride price of 100 Philistine foreskins, and that always makes me wince. But David did it, and he got Michal. He married Michal. When Saul was trying to kill David, Michal helped David escape out the window and did the old body in a bed thing to deceive Saul's messengers, his killers, and Saul himself. And then David's on the run, and Saul gives Michal to another man to marry. And then Michal drops out of the picture until Saul dies and David becomes king of a divided kingdom, because Saul's surviving son has, with Abner's help, taken the other part of the kingdom. But when Abner defects to David, which basically essentially gives David kingship over all of Israel, David's condition is that he return Michal to him. And they take Michal away from her husband and give her to David. And then we see Michal again when David's bringing the ark in and talk about how she despises him in her heart. The spectacle he's making. Now, I kind of see a couple things going on here. A couple things that pop out at me is Michal perhaps being a little snooty as the princess? He's just not acting dignified enough. Maybe. I can certainly see that in what she says, that she feels like the way he was dancing and uncovering himself was vulgar. It was common. But I get the feeling, this reading between the lines here, that there's no love anymore in this relationship. Yeah, I really kind of get the feeling that David asking for Michal back was more of a power move and a prideful move rather than I love her and I want her back. David at this point had, I don't know how many wives he has at this point. I know that later he has 7, counting Michal. So I don't know. This part, neither one of them come off really well, to be honest. Which is kind of interesting. That when you look at the stories of the Old Testament, many of the main characters, the main figures in the history of Israel, are shown warts and all. They're being shown in really not very flattering stories. So there's a brutal honesty here that I find kind of refreshing. And it's different than a lot of other ancient literature, and it's definitely different than a lot of other ancient religious writings. This blunt honesty about the faults of these figures in your religion, to me, lends it more authenticity. It makes it seem certainly seem a lot more honest. But we see Jacob was a conniver. He really does not come off well. In particular, Samson is a horrible figure, a horrible person. And then we have David, who was considered one. Yeah, we know Saul. We just finished kind of Saul's story, and we saw his faults. But David is not this paragon of virtue. Even though he's one considered their greatest king and beloved of God, he's many times not a nice person. There's many examples of that that I don't need to go into here because it's already taken too long. But that's just part of David here. Does not really come off all that great. He's kind of having this nasty conversation with Michael. And there's an arrogance there. It was before the Lord who chose me in place of your father and all his household to appoint me as prince over Israel. There's an arrogance there. Anyway, move on. I'm sure you're going to hear me talk about the faults of David many times before it's all said and done. And maybe even on the 25th. All right, New Testament. Luke 7:31-35. To what then will I compare the people of this generation, and what are they like? They're like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another, we played the flute for you and you did not dance. We wailed and you did not weep. For John the Baptist has come eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. And the Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Nevertheless, wisdom is vindicated by all her children. Man, it's funny to me how many people that I have found that it never clicks that Jesus is being accused of being a glutton and a drunkard here. A friend of tax collectors and sinners. It really humanizes Jesus, I think. It really lets us see the human side of him. But it also shows what people are saying about him. We sometimes get swayed by the accolades that we see and the crowds he's drawing, and we kind of skim over some of the other viewpoints that are showing, where even his family worried that he was a little crazy. Or people were saying he had a demon, or in this case, he's a glutton and a drunkard. And some of it was even people close to him. Like I said, his own family wondered if he had lost his mind at one point. I think we just read that a couple weeks ago. So there is the Passion Week and the conflict with the Pharisees that precedes it and really intensifies during that Passion Week are not the only instances of a counter movement, opposition to the way. It's not all everybody except the religious elites were praising him. There were people who were critical and did not believe and looked negatively upon everything Jesus was doing. So that's a kind of an interesting inclusion here, and he said keep in mind for these anomalies as they pop up, because they actually do tell us something. As a English teacher, I very frequently would tell my students every word in a written text is there for a purpose, because written texts get edited. The writer goes through and revises and edits, and everything is in there for a reason. There's an old rule of thumb for writers: if it's not furthering your plot, furthering your story, you cut it. You don't have unnecessary verbiage in there. And honestly, the Bible is no different. It is a collection of literary texts that tell the story of Israel's relationship with God, culminating in Jesus. But everything is in there for a purpose. So why did they include this? whenever you come across, like I said, especially these anomalies here, maybe these negative viewpoints, these negative comments, why are they there? Because the author included them for a reason. In this case, Luke included this comment for a reason. The writer of Samuel included these negative things about David for a reason. Now, if you go to Chronicles, you get a very sanitized version of David. All the negative stuff is gone. So they don't tell any of the stories that don't reflect well on David, like David and Bathsheba. Completely missing out of the Chronicles version. So why is it included in Samuel? That's the kind of thing I always want you to keep in mind whenever you read Scripture. Think about why something has been included. Why would the author put this there? Those can be very important, and those can tell us an awful lot about what the author was intending to say and what he wanted people to take away from the text. And I have gone on and on for 16 minutes now, so I will let you go for today. I will see you tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see you in church on Sunday, the 18th, because it will be the pastor installation service, which is going to be a very special thing. I'm very excited and humbled and honored to have this service and this installation. And then we get to have a potluck because we're good Baptists. And we have a potluck. The meat will be provided by the church, so bring your sides and desserts. And I'll see you Sunday face to face, right, guys? Bye.